In a moment, we'll be hearing from the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, who is, of course, campaigning with the local elections only, 3 weeks away now.
Yeah, and a big day in Westminster today. Lots of things that we've been talking about this morning, including our lead story this morning about a smoking ban, a ban on the sale of tobacco products that they're going to be talking about in Westminster. See what he's going to say about that.
And, of course, the after effects of the Rwanda bill, which was being debated in the House of Lords and then back to the House of Commons again all night last night. So lots of politics going on. And nearly 3/4 of all car thefts were not attended by the police last year. That's according to new data out this morning from the Liberal Democrats, who are calling for more officers on the streets.
Well, the government says vehicle crime is down 39% since 2010. And Sir Ed Davey joins us now, leader of the Liberal Democrats. Morning, Mr Davey.
Good morning.
You've recently revealed, as we said there, 72% of car thefts were, in fact, not attended by police. What would you do to make sure that they are?
Well, when you look at the analysis, and it's shocking figures that so many people have their car stolen and the police don't attend and investigate it. We believe that you need to tackle the shortage of detectives. The experts tell us that there's probably a shortage of 7,000 detectives across England and Wales. That's a serious problem, and it means that car thefts aren't getting investigated and solved, burglaries aren't getting investigated and solved, and I'm afraid the Conservatives are very, very complacent when it comes to crime. Liberal Democrats have been knocking on a record number of doors this year ahead of the local elections on May the 2nd and the general election, which we expect later this year. People have been telling us about their concerns about the NHS, about the cost of living, but also about crime. So people's experience of crime, whether it's burglaries, thefts, car thefts, antisocial behaviour, are really real, and they feel the Conservatives haven't done enough. So our commitment, whether it's on dealing with the shortage of detectives or getting more community police in our neighbourhoods, is one that I think is right for the problems we face.
And how many years do you think, or months, would it take to fill those vacancies, those missing 7,000 detectives?
Oh, it would take some time. It's not something that can be done overnight, I regret. But we need a full-scale approach to the problems in our criminal justice system. So I could also go on about the huge backlogs in our courts, because even when we catch and find criminals at the moment, the victims have to wait sometimes several years, even in serious offences, before the perpetrator is brought to justice. So I'm afraid the Conservatives have been asleep in the wheel when it comes to crime in all aspects of tackling crime, deterring criminals and catching them.
The government has actually said, having looked at what you're announcing today, saying that you continue to snipe from the sidelines without offering a plan. What would you say to that?
Well, I think your listeners have heard the plan already. The shortage of detectives is appalling. It's been getting worse under the Conservatives. And the Conservatives have cut, since 2015, the number of police officers in the community. And so I'm afraid we've been going backwards for some years under the Conservatives. And the fact that they trot out these lines show that they're completely out of touch. We feel they're taking people for granted. They don't really understand what's going on in our communities up and down the country. And voters on May the 2nd have a chance, whether it's on their local elections or whether it's on the elections for police and crime commissions across the whole country, to send the Conservative message to say we're not going to accept this anymore. And whether it comes to this failure to deal with crime properly, or whether it's the problems in our health service, the cost of living crisis, which is hitting so many millions of people, it's time for the Conservatives to go.
Mr Davey, it is actually quite some time since we've been able to talk to you here on BBC Breakfast, so there are a number of other big stories that are going on at the moment I do want to talk to you about. Sure. I'm going to start with the situation in the Middle East and just get your response to those strikes by Iran against Israel at the weekend.
Well, they were shocking, and Liberal Democrats join all the other parties to condemn them in the strongest possible way. I was pleased to see the RAF, our brave pilots, involved in defending Israel against this appalling attacks. And it really is important that we stand with Israel on their security. We do have one, because I raised this in the House with the Prime Minister yesterday. We are worried about what next steps the Netanyahu government will take. It's absolutely vital that they are restrained and they take this as a win, as I think President Biden said, and that there is no retaliation because there is a real danger this will escalate. And if we see a war across the whole of the region, that will be shocking. Many people will die, and it will cause just untold suffering. So we need to make sure there's no escalation here, and that should be the top priority of our government and all governments who are friends of Israel.
Does Israel have the right to take further action, though?
Well, Israel always has the right to defend herself, but how they do that needs to be done in a smart way as well as a tough way. And I think the smart way now is to say, they defended very successfully. It's a big win. Iran failed, and let's not result in actions that cause escalation.
We know, don't we, moving on now to our lead story today, which is we're talking about smoking, that MPs are going to get the chance to debate for the first time today government plans that would make it illegal for anyone turning 15 or younger this year to ever be able to buy tobacco products. Will you be supporting the government on this? Yeah,
I've decided to vote for this phased ban. I've seen the health impacts of smoking tobacco. There's no good outcome. It's always bad. It's the leading cause of preventable death in our country. And if you look at cancer, which is a big issue for the Liberal Democrats in the election campaign, we're trying to put forward policies to cut cancer waiting times and to reduce cancer deaths. And if you're serious about that, you've got to, I think, support this measure from the government. I lost both my parents to cancer as a youngster. My father died when I was 4, my mother died when I was 15. They weren't actually smoking related. But when you see how many children, young people lose their parents due to smoking-related illness, I think it's really important we take this far more seriously. And I accept that it's a difficult issue for many people. As leader of the Liberal Democrats, I know there are people in my party who believe that we shouldn't be banning things left, right and centre. But I do think on this case, the evidence is overwhelming, and I hope this bill passes today.
Let's move on now to the Post Office inquiry, something we have been following very, very closely here on this programme. You were business minister back in 2010, I believe, when at that time Postmaster Alan Bates wrote to you. You had oversight of the Post Office at that time. He first contacted you in 2010. It took you 5 months to meet him. Considering what has happened since then and all the information that has come to light, do you think you maybe owe him a face-to-face apology for what you did at the time?
Well, I think Mr Bates is a hero. What has happened to Sub Postmasters is quite outrageous. I actually was the first Post Office minister to meet Alan Bates, I believe. And originally, 11 days into office, I was told it wasn't for me to meet him. The Post Office is run at arm's length to the government, and we weren't involved in day-to-day matters. And not surprisingly, when I wrote that letter 11 days into office, he was quite annoyed. And when I read his letter, which shows all the concerns that you've described, I decided that I should meet him. And when I did meet him, I put all his points that he made to Post Office executives and to officials. And they said that his main point, he believed there was remote access to the Horizon systems. They told me that was not true, and the IT systems that they had been independently verified. I wish I'd seen through the lies of the Post Office executives, just as I'm sure all ministers from all political parties wish they'd done, and all the judges and courts who presided over those appalling miscarriages of justice wish they'd seen through the lies. I'm just delighted that at long last there is a chance of justice. It's been delayed far too long, and what we're campaigning for now is that the government gives compensation properly and fairly and generously to all the sub-postmasters who've been affected.
OK, let me just remind you of a quote from Alan Bates, from that letter that you've mentioned there, that we've seen at the Post Office inquiry last week. And this is what he said to you. He says, "You have adopted an arm's-length relationship that you have allowed a once great institution to be asset stripped by little more than thugs in suits. You've enabled them to carry on with impunity, regardless of the human misery and suffering they inflict."
Well, I'd been in post 5 months when he wrote that second letter to me, and it was because of his letter that I decided to meet him. I obviously wasn't involved when the Horizon system was originally brought in 10 years before, and his letter moved me. And that's why I met him and listened to him. And when I reflect on that, I'm just so angry that the Post Office executive, despite me putting all his concerns to them, just continued to lie. And I went further, actually. I spoke to the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters, who, if you like, are the sort of trade union of sub-postmasters. And I asked them, was there concerns, did they share the concerns of Alan Bates and his group? And they said no. They backed up the Post Office. So when we get to the inquiry, and I'm really looking forward to giving evidence, I actually championed the inquiry. I wanted the inquiry to take place. I'm sure that will all be confirmed. What I want to see is people who caused this, the Post Office executives and probably people in Fujitsu, brought to book, whether it's through the inquiry itself or the police investigation. People need to be held account for their lies and perverting the course of justice. And I want to see the sub-postmasters, the victims, not just exonerated, but properly compensated too.
OK, so we're talking about 2010. It's now 2024. I'm just going to take you back to the question I asked you a moment ago. Do you think that Alan Bates deserves a face-to-face apology from you?
Well, I have actually already said I wish I'd seen him after the first letter.
So would you apologise now?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. You know, I wish I'd seen him after the very first letter he wrote to me immediately on my taking office. I'm pleased I saw him after 5 months and was the first Post Office Minister to see him. And, you know, absolutely, I really wish I'd seen him right at the start. And I wish I'd seen through the Post Office lies. And I'm sure all the many Post Office ministers during this period feel the same as I do. So
if Alan Bates is watching us right now, what would you say to him?
I'm sorry I didn't see you immediately. Absolutely.
And you'll meet him?
I'm very happy to meet him. In fact, I reached out and asked to meet him. So I'm very happy.
You have already done that?
Yes, I've reached out to him. We haven't met, but I've offered to meet him.
Sir Ed Davey, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.